Hey guys, I wanted to share with you my top 5 list of recommended witchy reading material. Okay, so at the very top of my list is Laura Keppett's book, Power of the Witch. Now, this book I wish had been the very first book that I'd ever read in the early 90s. But unfortunately, the internet was new at the time, and I had been, um, joining all these message boards at the time. None of which I think exist anymore, except Witchbox. They have been stable ever since. But yeah, there was a particular group that I had joined years and years ago, and I'd asked for recommendations, and of course they recommended a particular author to me. I won't name names because it's not my style. And I really wish they hadn't, because that author was just I'm not going to be impolite about it, but her books really weren't worth the money. They weren't worth the paper they were printed on. I will put it that way. Um, but yeah, God, this book was just a game changer when I read it. It's worth the cost of 2 chapters alone. The Science of Witchcraft, and I believe there's a whole chapter in here about the alpha state of consciousness. This book is worth those 2 chapters alone, because it goes into the physics and the science in witchcraft, which really satiates the those of us who are a lot more left-brained. In fact, this book was so important to me that I went out and ordered a near mint condition hardback copy of it, and I even have some dust jackets that I'm going to be fitting around it soon to keep it a little better protected. The next book is, and I really would like to find a hard copy of this one as well. It's Wicca: The Old Religion in the New Age by Vivian Crowley. It is in my opinion, it is a natural companion to Power of the Witch, because it discusses things such as coven structure, the Sabbats, and how the god and the goddess relate to the turning of the wheel. It discusses things such as the hive mind, the ape has the power, how to make magic, things like that. It's really a deeply insightful book. One of my favorites that I don't see on very many recommended reading lists these days. In fact, few of the books I am recommending really make it onto anyone's recommended reading list, and I would really like to see that change for the better of our community as a whole, because they have stood the test of time. They are classics. You will rarely find me recommending any book that was written past 1990. And there's a really good reason for this, because publishers at the time weren't really publishing books of good quality after the 90s, and that's still pretty much the case with a few exceptions, and I will get to one of those exceptions during the course of this video. But the next book in my list is The Witch's Way by Janet Stewart Farrar. I originally had The Witch's Bible complete, but I really don't like soft covers, especially when I can buy a hardcover book. Particularly in the case of The Witch's Bible, because it practically fell apart in my hands within a week or two of owning it. And that book was so important to me that a friend of mine actually gave me his hardback copy of The Witch's Way, because he knew that he would be giving it to a really good home. And and I really do hope that, I am caring for, well, I think I am caring for well, obviously, but I don't want to disappoint the previous owner of it, who gave it to me as a gift. I really do cherish this book. Um, it's really very traditional. It discusses the origins of the craft, ethics of witchcraft, reincarnation, rituals of protection, spells, initiation, leaves from the actual Book of Shadows, by Jared Gardner and Doreen Valiente. There are lots of vintage photographs in it. It's just a solid book. The next book is really the companion book to The Witch's Way, and that is Janet and Stuart Farrar's 8 Sabbaths for Witches. It really is just what it says. It's just rites and rituals for the Sabbath from a very traditionalist perspective, and it's just a golden oldie. It's a classic. Get your hands on a copy of it. I was really lucky enough to find a hardback copy at my local half-price bookstore. In fact, I found quite a few of the Farrar's books, hardback books, at my local half-price bookstore. With the exception of The Witch's Goddess. So if anyone out there sees a hardback copy of The Witch's Goddess by Janet and Stuart Farrar, it should be sort of a bluish cover. The dust jacket should be. So if you see that, pick it up, let me know, and I will reimburse you. And the final book on Wade's top 5 list of witchy books and recommended reading is, and really the only modern book, or the only recent contemporary book on my list of top 5 books that every witch should read, is The Elements of Ritual, Air, Fire, Water, and Earth in the Wiccan Circle by Deborah Libb. I wish that this book had been written years ago, because it really fills in quite a few gaps in my own knowledge, particularly with regard to how the circle is cast. Because often when people are casting circles, they sort of stop at the last point that they are invoking, and then they just sort of go back to the altar and go about their business, when in fact what you traditionally do is you walk back around to the first point that you invoked, and you sort of salute that position in the circle. And you often see a lot of witches being trained to do that in traditional structures. But God, it just has tons of knowledge in it that was really new to me in a sense. It really breaks down the elements it really breaks down and talks about the elements with regard to every process within the circle casting process. It discusses, the cult images. It discusses the mysteries of the ritual tools that a lot of witches and pagans take for granted. She explains it in great detail, such as the mysteries of the chalice. That when you pass this object around the circle, you're extending the blessings of the goddess from yourself. To yourself, but from yourself, but also to each assembled member within the group or coven. A lot of books really just sort of look over that, and it's extremely valuable and insightful information that I think really needs to get out there. So if you see a copy for a book, buy it. And that is Wade's top 5 books of wiki recommendations. Okay, so this video isn't quite over yet, I thought it would be a good idea to start my very first tag video. So if you're watching it, consider yourself tagged, and I would like to see you post a video of your own about your top 5, that's the number 5, witchy books. The books that are the most important to you, the books that you recommend the most highly, the books that have meant the most to you along your path. Post a video about it, and I want to see it. I want to see what books you recommend and why. I'm really interested in getting to know you as an individual better, because we all have our own unique personalities and tastes. What I like may not be what other people like. It's just the culmination of my own life experiences that have really gravitated me towards books such as Power of the Witch. So, tag, you're it.